first, let me start with congratulations on the movie. I know families, and it's going to be a big hit for Disney, and I'm sure people are going to love it. I'm curious, what was the genesis of you getting involved in the project? Was it something that you pitched on? Like, how did you get involved?
Gil Nutter first had the rights to the book. My producer, he'd done things like Life of Pi and The Blind Side and things like that. And so he adapted it with a screenwriter named Brad Copeland, who had done things for like Arrested Development. He recently wrote Spies in Disguise. So I came on board when they sent me the script, and I wasn't necessarily looking, I hadn't watched that many kids movies. And so I watched it. I mean, I read it, and it had the sort of like that Arrested Development humor. It had sort of like the things that like will make adults laugh. And I was like, okay, maybe I could do this and make it into a family movie. And what really got me was just sort of like the deeper themes, how it like didn't shy away from these adult issues. And it hit very personally for me to have like something about people who'd sort of been like, I don't know, dropped to their knees by the world and what it takes to get back up again. And I just love that so much. It felt like it was so much more than just like a movie about a family. And I was kind of in from there. We went around pitching to some of the different studios and ultimately landed with Disney.
This feels like this is definitely a good fit at Disney. It's based on a novel. And obviously you can't make it exactly like what the novel is. You have to make changes. Can you sort of talk about some of the things that balancing that, keeping the fans of the novel happy while also making a movie?
For my part, I purposely didn't read the book until almost post. Obviously the screenwriter had quite a bit. But I used it more to inform things like the voiceover, this and that, because I wanted to make sure the movie had its own life and could stand on its own feet and wasn't constrained, like just whatever. And my producer was the one who helped us the main themes of the movie and the main characters came from the book, and that would never change. We made sure to be true to that, especially about, her genesis from being a cynic to somebody who knows how to see the world. But beyond that, we just kind of took things and we made, like, for instance, there's some of the characters that we tried to make a little more full formed. Like, for instance, the main one is George. In the book, he's really depressed and he's down on his luck, and he doesn't sort of have as much of that backstory. So ours, we wanted to make somebody who didn't know how to kind of see himself anymore, and now he's a comic book artist of his own right, and kind of bringing all that through. Miller was a creation, and then there was just small things that just made me excited. Like, I was trying to figure out how to replace Marianne, the shepherdess lamp, which is in the book. The lamp is Marianne, like a shepherdess, and I was like, no, we got to have something that goes with that whole like romance novelist thing that'll make people laugh. And then when I happened upon thinking of Jack and Rose, then I was like, yes. So it was a lot of things like that. And then ultimately my producer had to call James Cameron and get permission for us to use the Jack and Rose. And that was like a whole thing.
That's a great bit in the movie. Have you seen Ex Machina?
Yes.
Okay. So when you are filming a dance sequence in a movie, are you always in the back of your mind, is this ever going to be as cool as Oscar dancing in Ex Machina?
I don't know if I was thinking exactly that, but yeah, maybe something like that. Although Ben is really charismatic when he's dancing, so we were kind of just captivated by him and his weird moves.
I completely understand. You have you start the movie off with a joke about Silver Surfer. You show the Wolverine miniseries comic book. How tough was it to get that stuff in the movie? Did you have to jump through a lot of hoops, or did it actually end up being pretty easy?
We had a significant amount of things. Basically, I put as many as I could. Well, the goal wasn't to put them in. They just kind of like, the movie is about like a girl who swims in this sort of philosophy. So they naturally came through. And then we had to deal with clearances. So we were lucky because by that point we had already done a couple of screenings. And so Disney was like really happy to push for us. So they pushed and used their Disney strength with, like, I think Sean Bailey literally called Kevin Feige to get us to help us with that intro sequence, because we were so enamored by it. We're like, we have to have that. He helped push that through. But there's some things where like, they were like, okay, it's a little much now. You got to stop. Like at the end on the main on ends, which was one of my favorite images. It was drawn so cool. You have Ulysses with an infinity gauntlet, but instead of the infinity stones, there's M&Ms. There was one where Ulysses had a Wolverine pose. Like he was going like this, except he had like some tree branches that were caught on his hands. Like, and it happened to be like that. They said, we can't do that one either. It was a little too much. Oh, the curtain just fell. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that the real life.
Yes.
So in the movie, you have a nice doorbell reference with Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's a Marvel line that I don't want to give away that from Tony Stark. That kind of stuff, was that also tough to use, or was it all in that whole thing about clearances?
That was the same sort of clearance thing we had to go with. The Marvel line was fine. That one actually had no problem. We basically just had to pay for the one for the doorbell. And we had a bunch of ones we thought of. That was the one that I really wanted because George is a little depressed at that point, or maybe a little angry at you. So we wanted something that was comic nerdy, but also had a little darkness to it. And so that's where that came.
Talk a little bit about, obviously when you get in the editing room, you're hoping that it's all going to come together. What did you learn from like your first assembly cut that made you happy and also made you nervous?
The one that made me really happy was how much Ulysses was able to carry his own. I think that was, were able to hold his own. And the big thing is we really had to calibrate Phyllis's character because she is technically in the book a villain. So we had to kind of make sure that we were also rooting for her. So I think the most massaging that was done was on that front. And it was also just picking the things like your battles. There was so much comedy and they had done so much improv that we had to make sure that it was always just serving the story and pull back, when we needed to.
That's what I was also curious about. When you have really funny people in the movie, I would imagining that there's going to be alt takes on almost everything that you're like, I could use that, or I could use that.
Yeah, and there's a lot where like me and let's say, the writer, like we just loved it, we adored it, but maybe like, somebody over at Disney would have, a different take on it. And so we'd be doing this like debates all the time. Like we were fighting over lines, and it was good. I think that things were better for it for the fight, but yeah, there's a lot of debates.
This movie does not work without your lead, and she is fantastic. Talk a little bit about casting Matilda, and when did you know that she was the one? My casting director, Emily Schwaber, is responsible for the search for Matilda and ultimately finding her. So she showed us, we went through over 1,000 girls, and it was really hard. Like we just could not find somebody who could say like, these mature things and where you'd actually believe she knows what she's saying. And who also could do that vulnerability, because she is at the end of the day still a 10-year-old, and who can do that dry humor, like that biting humor, and sometimes with the sarcasm. And so she was literally the only one we found who could do that. And so the first audition, we're like, okay, maybe. First of all, her voice is amazing. And then I think I just needed to get onto Skype with her once and see the way that she also lit up, because she has that like young Juno type quality. But for the movie, you also have to make sure that her optimistic side can come out too, and she can be basically a little girl and light up. And I saw that when I Skyped with her. And then I think from there, I was like, there can be nobody else in this movie. You have a lot of VFX shots in this thing, and you had, I believe, like a year and a half in post or a year in post. Talk a little bit about maybe some of the shots that were just making you want to scream.
Oh gosh. Yeah. The 3-point landing was very important to me. Like every time I saw that and it wasn't exactly what I imagined it to be, I was like, no, it's not right yet. That has to be the most badass moment of the whole movie. And the end of the movie, that sequence where he's jumping on the trees and he goes up and it's Batman. That one was driving me insane too, because first we tried it with plates. That didn't work. Ultimately, that is an entirely CGI created shot. And that means it took like 6 months, and you're creating the whole thing out of like, you're just hoping it works, even though you can't even see most of it yet.
Is it sort of nice to not have to worry about the opening weekend box office, that it's just going to be out, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there is something really nice. The one thing about it coming out during a pandemic and having a funny movie that is literally what people could use right now is that there's going to be a lot of people who will watch it at their house. And so there's something kind of freeing about that, and knowing that people are looking for content and they are watching on the platform. So there was something that, made us feel good about that.
Completely. Listen, congrats on the movie. I hope you're making something else really soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.